Forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
I don't know about where you are, but from where I sit looking out the window here at the compound, looks like the mythical land of Jotunheim. Expecting a frost giant to come and stomp me out here any minute. It's the frozen wasteland that is the South in this bizarre winter of 2014. Hello, it is I, the maniacal minister of the occult, the Reverend Dan Wilson, back for another edition of the Midnight Black Mass. Last week you heard part 2 of Jeremy Vane on the Wildside Chronicles, and we return with the Wildside Chronicles this week, but a new guest, and that will be a man who held pretty much every championship that Wildside had to offer, sans the junior heavyweight title, a Triple Crown winner, certainly all that, Adam Jacobs, in what is a highly entertaining part 1. He'll be returning for a part 2 next week as well. We'll actually be back later with a part 3 of Jeremy Vane. We had covered pretty much all the Wildside ground in the first 2 interviews, and so I'd already had this one with Adam scheduled, and the last blizzard that we got caused me and Jeremy to reschedule, so that's why the break in continuity there, but no worries, Jeremy Vane will be back, and so will all that Adam Jacobs, but buckle in because he's going to entertain the hell out of you here tonight. Tonight I would be at PCW, Platinum Championship Wrestling, at the Actors Express Theater in Atlanta, Georgia. It was going to be at 8 p.m. bell time, and I was going to have a grand old time causing chaos and cacophony at the Actors Express with PCW, but the winter weather put a kibosh on my plans, so I did not dare to travel the treacherous, icy roadways between my home in Tennessee and hot Atlanta, Georgia. So no Platinum Championship Wrestling. The event was postponed. It will be rescheduled at a future date, and I'll have more information for you about that. Did get to, however, make my way up to Blue Ridge, Georgia for Deep Southern Championship Wrestling. You can find more about them at dscw.org. Huge night at the DSCW Arena in Blue Ridge. We're talking a packed house, over 400 fans in attendance to witness the return of the phenomenal AJ Styles to Blue Ridge and the North Georgia mountains there. And AJ out on his independent tour. He's doing well. I spoke to him at length, and he'll be appearing soon on the Midnight Black Mass himself. But it was AJ Styles teaming with DSCW star Semper Fi Cody Roberts, taking on the team of The Temptations, Sean Tempers, and Ring of Honor star Corey Hollis. And hell of a match. And even just to show you how greatness is, the sound system actually went out before that match, and so they were forced to wing it. No entrance music, no introductions, old school, just a ring bell. Fans knew what was up, and that didn't stop them from screaming at the top of their lungs the entire match, and from all 4 guys just going out there and just grinding it out and leaving it in the ring. I do believe it was AJ and Roberts that were victorious, sending the fans home happy in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Tank was victorious for you reject fans out there that showed up in Blue Ridge to support us. Tank, the strong style psycho, defeated in pretty short order. It was a hell of a hard-hitting, brutal match. The lumberjack Big Will, a former partner of Big Wood, who is the guy who trained me and many others, and man, we respect greatly, but Big Will is a guy that had a victory over Tank before down there, so it was nice to see him get a little even, settle a little score, and flatten Big Will with the rolling avalanche in the corner, the rolling thunder, as has been called. And Tank's coming back to DSCW, and he wants some blood as his slaughter tour continues. Okay, the Strong Style Psycho, he's got a lot on his mind and got a lot of people he wants to hurt, and so he's making his way around wherever he can, and it's going to be a lot of fun. One of those places has been, and since I haven't been there due to some other engagements over the last couple of weeks, Empire Wrestling in Rossville, Georgia. And apparently Tank has caused a lot of havoc. I've gotten a lot of phone calls from angry matchmakers and commissioners down there as to the hell that the Strong Style Psycho has been raising without me there to sort of put a leash on him as his manager. So now I will return along with Tank this coming Saturday night. Rossville, Georgia, 22 Austin Avenue. You don't want to miss that this Saturday night, February the 15th. You will see the Reverend and Tank in action. Empire Wrestling, Facebook.com/Empire Wrestling. Definitely want to check them out. So, gotten a good response to the Rev's rant so far, which is just essentially me throwing out some advice, mainly for my brothers actually in the wrestling business and guys trying to take it to the next level. Oftentimes, I'm speaking to you from a place of experience. I'm trying to warn you against mistakes maybe I've made or have seen others made that have cost them. So if you have any desire to attain any success, whether it be at the level you're at or on a higher level perhaps, then listen to this one. It's important. It plays a little bit more off of what I talked about last time, which was turning off the mark button. This time is professional use of social media. So I understand the dilemma, right? Social media is intended to be used to express yourself. And so as a guy who has a wrestling career and also runs an R-rated comedy / fringe pop culture website, podcast network, I understand. I sympathize. There's a line that you have to walk, okay? So you have to appeal to the demographic you're trying to reach. You don't want to lose your edge if having said edge is even or should even be part of your presentation. But you also have to be careful not to offend people who could lead to your making money. See, I know I curse too much on social media myself. I just have a limited filter because I don't believe there's such a thing as a bad word. Bad intentions, sure. Bad thoughts, absolutely. But since language is a completely made-up concept invented by humans as a form of communication, that simply means that some jackass somewhere decided that fuck, shit, cunt, etc. were bad words and we just went with it. So I didn't have any say in that discussion, so I don't abide by that piece of social etiquette. So more along the George Carlin line of thought. So like I tell my daughter, there's not bad words, only adult words. But because of that, sometimes I forget that my language offends folks. So I'm sorry if it does, but it kind of comes with a package. Especially here on the show, but I could even do my part to clean up my social media mouth. Because you never know who's stooping that shit, for one. But beyond the language, right, let's look at professionalism in social media. So whether you work for WWE or the lowest of low indie shows, the best way to kill any mystique you have built is to come off like a loser that nobody would want to be friends with, much less actually pay money to see. Some of you fucks, I'd make you pay me to hang out with you. And you all know the offender types, the heinous villains of the internet. That'd be Mr. or Mrs. Pity Party, the Spelling Bee Dropout, Caps Lock Man, and if you're over 40, I'll give you a pass on the caps lock thing. But if you're under 40, then you got no excuse. The can't resist commenting on every single post made about a show they're on and always tries to cut internet promos squad to try to sell their matches, and they're not fucking good, and they're not approved by the office, and there's 8 million other fucking reasons that you shouldn't be doing it. But those guys, okay? And let's see, the Baby Drama Mama Committee. And last, and maybe least, the held back superstar, also known as the shitty expert. So if you know any of those, or if you fall under any of those categories, and if you think I'm talking to you, I probably am, then you really need to reevaluate what you're doing out there, because this is the impression that you're giving off to people. And you probably aren't, like, really like that in real life, but you have some need to display this on social media. You'll friend anybody who will pay you a smattering of attention on Facebook. You post every detail of your miserable life, but on the weekend, you play superstar and expect somebody to care. So have some respect for yourself, and you'll be amazed at what is returned to you. Now, I'm not saying we all don't have some crazy shit to deal with personally. Like, look, I've had some extremely ugly personal shit that's happened to me over the years. Thankfully, long in the past, but still, it's rough. And you know how I maintain my dignity about it. I don't go on public forums or social media and air my personal issues. If your friends know about it, that's one thing. Like, I got nothing to hide, and I'm sure most of you don't think you do either. Share it with your friends, but you don't need to share this stuff with the world. Knowledge is, and always will be, power. An overload of personal information about yourself is never good to just have floating out there in the ether and always come back to get you. So don't cancel bookings with public Facebook posts. Don't take business there. Don't go trashing former promoters and towns you work for unless they actually legitimately fucked you over and are going to fuck others unless you say something. And even so, there's probably a better way to go about it than on Facebook. Okay? Don't air locker room drama in public, and if you have a legitimate beef with somebody, try to settle it man to man instead of making a public spectacle of it. We all fall prey to temptation sometimes, especially when it comes to telling some idiot off, but I'm more referring to instances between the boys in particular, guys who work together especially, but it really applies to everybody, okay? So, just my friendly advice for the week on the Revs Rant. You gotta watch that social media. You gotta carry yourself a little better because, unfortunately, promoters are looking at that, and if they see how you carry yourself with little to no regard about what's placed in the public eye, certainly doesn't make you a desirable person to book or employ. So that's just a thought. This has been the Revs Rant for this week. We'll be back right after this break with more Midnight Black Mass. We've got all that Adam Jacobs on the Wildside Chronicles. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for listening to this fine Potty Humor production. Go to youtube.com/pottyhumor and hit subscribe today to be a part of all of the great content we offer here on a weekly basis at Potty Humor, the entertainment network that brings you fringe pop culture coverage, often humorous, often vulgar, no censors, no limits, right here, free over-the-air audio content each and every week. You're listening to the Midnight Black Mass, where myself, the Reverend Dan Wilson, hosts a variety of topics, mainly dealing with professional wrestling, but also we have celebrity guests like Phil Anselmo from Pantera, Hank Williams III, Unknown Henson, and many more to come. We've also actually had Jason Aaron from Marvel Comics on the show. So many more. So you definitely want to go to youtube.com/pottyhumor, that's PODDYHUMOR, and subscribe to the Potty Humor Network. We've also got brand new shows coming this year in 2014 that are already up. The Last Action Zeros podcast, hosted by Ian Sharp and Josh Miller, bringing you the best and the worst of sci-fi and action movies with often a cynical and hilarious point of view. We also have the Wolf Tickets MMA podcast, covering the Ultimate Fighting Championship monthly pay-per-views, also hosted by Josh Miller with a variety of special guests. We've also got Get Ya Pulls, one of the original shows here at the Potty Humor Network, hosted by myself and the great Muji, our founder here at Potty Humor, as well as sometimes guest host Todd Johnston. And we cover comic books each and every week, looking at reviewing the new releases. We also talk about any comic book movie news, pretty much the influence of the comic book culture in the mainstream world. And it's always a lot of fun. You get often a bit of cynicism also. So as one of our slogans goes, Potty Humor, more white guys bitching on the internet, and you know that's exactly what it needs. Go to youtube.com/pottyhumor and subscribe. Coming in 2014, Potty Humor TV. We've also had meetings for more shows coming. You want to be a part of this as it grows to the next level. Potty Humor, you can join it. youtube.com, Potty Humor. Click subscribe.
And we're back here on the Midnight Black Mass with a very special guest making his debut appearance on the Wildside Chronicles, a former Wildside television champion, former Wildside tag team champion, and even after pinning AJ Styles in a steel cage, a former Wildside heavyweight champion, even at his size, one of the funniest men I know, Mr. All That Adam Jacobs.
What's up, you son bitch?
Welcome to the show, brother man. It's been a long time finally getting you on here, but we made it happen.
Yeah, man, like I was actually all day today. I was checking out some of Bill Barron's and Iceberg, and a little bit of Jeremy Visa stuff. Like, I've been, like, super excited to do this, so.
Awesome. Well, so you kind of know the drill then. You've gotten familiar with what we do here. Talk a little bit about what people saw on the screen and a little bit about what happened behind the scenes as well. Let's go ahead and start just back to the beginning, at least. I met you in Dalton, Georgia at TWA Wrestling, but of course you started even before that, and you actually were one of the last guys that I had met that was trained when wrestling was truly a closed business, and sort of the line was right there after you came in. So tell me a little bit about that and just what drew you to wrestling and how you got into it in the first place.
Yeah, like actually, I started with a guy named Toy Dotson, and we're doing actually going to Rossville, Georgia. It was like '96. We were still in high school, and we were going to this show in Rossville. It was TWA, and Toy's uncle actually knew the shot caller, which was Mad Jack at the time. Which, if anybody don't know that guy, he's like super intelligent with the business, just a great all-around guy. But we had got with him and told him we wanted to work. But both of us weighed like 120 pounds, just like looked horrible. But at that time, they were really really nice to us because we got to meet a few of the guys. And he told us that we get trained there. All we had to do was clean the building up after the shows on Friday night, and because we were both broke, we were in high school. And so that's kind of how it started. We just started going and cleaning the building up after the shows. And actually, the two guys that we give credit on training us was a guy named Chucky Chuck and Rick Justice. But a lot of the guys back in that era kind of got in there and threw us around a little bit. So it's pretty much started, like that. Kind of paying our dues and getting beat up. And wanted to see if we were going to come back the next week and take another ass whipping, and that's kind of basically how it all happened. So,
yeah, and you guys, you paid those dues, and you ended up being top guys in the area, and then you started moving on really and getting other bookings and going out to other places, and I started working in Nashville a bit, and I believe that's how you ended up in Wildside. But just before you get there, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about that whole Nashville experience, as it's, of course, one of the historic wrestling cities in the world, and also just rife with a history of colorful characters and crazy escapades. So, yeah, what was up with Nashville?
Yeah, actually, how it got started, I met a guy named Kenny Arden. It was Kenny Arden and Frenchie Riviera, and I think John Arden was with him. And Kenny had done some TWA stuff, and he would come in. But I think, actually, how it got started is I called Bill, or maybe Kenny did. I don't really remember. But our first time meeting Bill, we did Loganville. It was like at a flea market. And it was me and Toy. And we did like a tryout match. And, he really liked us. But at that time, he didn't have a spot at Wildside. I think it was actually NCW at the time. He said, but there's this guy in Nashville, the infamous Burt Prentice, that he can use you. So Frenchie and Kenny and John, they were all doing Nashville at the time at the fairgrounds. And Toy had, had a beginning to have a family and kind of deal. So Toy just kind of pretty much did his own thing, in the area, like the North Georgia area. But Kenny and them, so you can ride to Nashville with us, and that's kind of how it all got started. That's my very first night at the fairgrounds. It was a funny story. The whole trip down there, I was green as goose shit, and anything Kenny and them told me was gospel to me. So, they could have told me anything, and I would have believed it. So the whole trip down there, they were talking about Bert Prentice, and they said, the very first time you meet Bert, and you'll meet him here in a little bit, tell him that you can tolerate the gays. That is exactly what they told me. Well, me being green, I had no idea. Never met Bert Prentice. I'd heard a lot about him. So I walk up, and I'm shaking everybody's hand, and there's Bert, and I tell Bert exactly that. That's exactly what I told him. And it was just the most embarrassing thing. And all the boys were just dying laughing. But that was my first meeting of Bert Prentice, but ended up teaming with Al Paris at that show. And I think we worked, it was like Chris Harris and it was somebody else. I don't remember, but so I actually started doing Nashville first, and that was like some of the coolest stuff that I've ever done because they grew really good houses. I mean, and they grew. It was like every other week. So it worked out good because I started doing stuff for Bert, and then on the weeks Bert didn't run, I just lucked out and started working for Bill. And it was all, history after that. But yeah, man, like Nashville was the place to be. And I looked horrible. Like looking back, I'm short, weighed 160 pounds, and but overall, man, it was like a great experience. Was being there in Nashville.
Yeah, I really loved working in Nashville around that time. You actually were there a few years before I got to go up there, but and it was even hotter when you were there than when I was there. But when I got to go up there, even like you could just go out with Chris Harris anywhere, and you get in for free and get like the VIP treatment, and like the crowds were just insane, and the fucking like the heat was just through the roof, for the heels, and it was quite an experience. It's slowly declined a little bit over time, but
and it was it was so different from like where I came from. I learned a lot at TWA, and that was pretty much the only place that I worked was them. But walking in from there to basically a fairgrounds drawing 1,000 people, I mean, it's just like, oh shit, what have I got myself into? And but yeah, it was just totally. And I knew once I was there, I was like, I don't belong with these guys. It was just. But eventually you find your niche, and you try to fit in the best you can. So.
Yeah, and you meet cool people along the way, and it's funny how you meet people that you see change over time, and different things happen to them, and we'll get to a lot of that. But of course, the first parts of that, I think, in your career probably would have started in Nashville. And then, anyway, but you did start at Wildside, as you mentioned, and my first experience seeing you at Wildside, you were teaming with a guy who really actually was a really great worker, a veteran Georgia guy, by the name of Dusty Dotson, doing a pimp gimmick called Silky Boom Boom, and you and him, Bill decided to call you the American Males. Now, clearly there was another American Males that, but a few years ago, had been pretty popular on television, so what was the fucking idea behind that in the first place?
You know what? I think it was shits and giggles, man. To be completely honest with you, I don't remember how he ended up putting me and Silky together. It was Dusty Dotson. There's a lot of people in like that Georgia area knew him before we did that. I came in a couple of TVs, man, and was basically just jobbing to guys, and he was going to put me in a tag team with this guy named Ed Swimmer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But he was a small guy. He was actually smaller than me. And we were going to do like this surfer boy gimmick. And at that point, man, I would have done anything. I didn't care what they wanted me to do. But for some reason, the Ed Swimmer deal was like axed. I don't know why.
He left.
But was that what happened?
Yeah, he quit. I never actually even worked with him, but just learning the history of the company as I was down there for so long, found that he was a guy that actually they did like a Barry Horowitz type deal with him. He was on essentially the ultimate jobber that won the big one, and then after that, I guess if some of the stories were right, I don't want to speak for him, but maybe he kind of got a big head about it, and they had a falling out, and he left. So that's why you never became a surfer boy.
Oh wow! The American Males deal, I have no idea where it came from, and I hated it from day one. When they first, I didn't hate tagging with Silky because I liked him and I always respected him, and he was a really good worker, like you said. But we both looked horrible. Small guys, like not in shape. I mean, I wasn't fat, but I was like not in shape.
You were tan. You were fucking tanning hard, brother. I mean,
Well, and that's what I've always told everybody. The hell at that time, to hell with working out, as long as I'm tan, or whatever. So. We went out there, man, and we had to do the whole Bagwell Scotty Riggs deal. And like you said, those were they were a pretty big face team, back in the day. And so they say American Males, and then me and Dusty come out, and it's just like, wow. Yeah. So I'm beginning to think that it just was a rib, or maybe it was just to see if I was going to do it, but like. I would have done anything, it didn't really matter. I just wanted to get my foot in the door and kind of get on TV every week, so.
Yeah, that was the big thing there, because the Wildside TV was rocking and rolling at that time. I mean, that was probably the best we had from like 2000 to 2002. It was like we had major TV, and then it was what it was, and it was still there and certainly impressive, but not like in those early days. It was real impressive.
Yeah, and that was, and I've heard it on a lot of the interviews, man. Like that was the place to be. Was there, man, because they were bringing in all kinds of guys that were just really good workers, and always the vibe that I've got, and I'll tell anybody this. That was the best time that I've ever had. The best locker room I've ever been in, and a lot of people don't believe this, but man, honest to God. When we were there around that 2000, 2002 time, I didn't see any egos. It was like everybody wanted a good product. And if it took them going out and taking an ass clipping every TV, if that's what it called for to make a good product, that's what we did. Everybody was just, at the end of the day, you wanted to have a good match, but you wanted the show to come off, it was like the alternative. And that was, I've never been in a locker room that's been like that, ever.
No, I agree, and it was like we were all really part of something. Like WCW had just shit the bed, and so you just had WWF, and we had we had our TV. It wasn't the best in the world, but it was there, and so by default we were a lot of eyes on us at that time. And it wasn't like it is now with the internet, where every show's got a fucking TV show. I mean, there was very few choices in the early 2000s for televised wrestling, and we were one of them. All the guys, they came together, and they really wanted to be a part of something special, I think, is the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think, I think we did. It was the best time I've ever had, and what's crazy is you meet guys that it was like 2000, 2002 when I met a lot of these guys, and I'm still friends with them today. We may not see each other, but, once a year or twice a year. But when you do see them down the road at a show or something, it's like you just saw them the day before, and that's what's great about it, was just the camaraderie between everybody, man, was just awesome.
Oh, I can totally attest to that. Like this weekend, actually, Friday night, worked a show for Deep Southern Championship Wrestling in Blue Ridge and hung out with AJ Styles. I mean, I saw him over the holidays, but just briefly because it was at Anarchy and it was busy. But, you know, we hung out and talked for quite a while, and he is coming on the show, confirmed officially, in the future. So that was cool. And then Saturday, I went up to Nashville for Andrew Thomas, the former Wildside referee's wedding. And White Trash was there, and Jeff G. Bailey was there, and it was a good old time, you know. Here we are all these years later, and every time I see you, you know, we're just chumming it up like we saw each other yesterday, and it's a rare thing.
Yeah, because you know the characters that some people, you know, it's like wrestling is a bunch of characters, honest to God, and you know, in a normal life circumstance, you know, guys like us. You wouldn't expect to hang out and be together, and but only wrestling can do that. Can bring, you know, just tons of different people together and get along. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, different, like, physical backgrounds, life backgrounds, economic backgrounds, different parts of the country, different parts of the world in many cases, and it's amazing sharing that part of you that's kind of strange and willing to go out here and kill yourself for fucking peanuts. There's not a lot of people that can do that, so you all have that same bond. But anyway, moving along in the Wildside stuff. So once your partnership with Silky Boom Boom ended, you finally did start to see some upward momentum, and that was based on you turning on Silky and joining the hottest thing going in Wildside at the time, and that was Suicidal Tendencies. So, but I mean, we're going to talk about the wrestling part of it, but rather than that at first, just like you got to be a part of a group with many very talented guys and very unique guys from a personal level. So I kind of wanted you to reflect on your relationships with each of them, and then just sort of the group and the wrestling as a whole.
Yeah, I had met Eric Harris years ago before that. Like earlier, I was still at TWA, and he was doing something called North Georgia Wrestling or something like that, and he was like their top small guy. And I was quote unquote the small guy that could go from TWA, and they were always wanting to get us together, and it never did. But somehow me and him became friends, and I think that kind of helped with me turning on Silky and kind of doing something a little different. But I'd never met John Phoenix and Jason Cross before, and I remember Paris, I think, had met him or knew him pretty well, and you know, at that time, man, like TV, we had to get there like super early, and I remember being in the ring and going over stuff, and these two guys walked in, and I thought, oh God, they look super athletic. How's this going to work out for me? I'm finally getting in my niche, and then these two guys come in, but they ended up putting us all together, and it really worked, man. Like, everybody got along. Cross, super athletic. And Phoenix, in my opinion, was one of the most underrated guys there. I mean, he could go with anybody. And then Paris was kind of the total package. He was an annoying son of a bitch at times. You get about 30 minutes of his ass, and then you tell him to go on somewhere. But I still talk to him now, you know, some Cross and John. Sometimes we'll talk on Facebook, you know, here and there. But yeah, that was like the funnest time, because we could really be ourselves, and it kind of let me come out of my shell a little bit, because I was healed and I could kind of act how I really acted. What's crazy, man, is that whole gimmick of how we acted. That's really me. Like, that's, you can probably attest to that. Like, I'm that guy, and it was just a really fun time to go out there and just kind of be yourself and kind of do your deal. So.
I mean, that's what gets over. You know, most wrestlers don't have acting training. Certainly some that do ain't even really that good at it. You know, it's like they overdo it. But some that do, like you can tell, it really helps. But most wrestlers, you know, that's the only way you're going to get over is to be yourself. And so, I think that was the issue in Wildside. They thought they were having trouble getting you over. I think somebody just suggested that, have you ever talked to the guy? Like, listen to his personality, just turn him heel and turn him loose, and that's essentially what happened with the suicidal tendencies. And it was a really hot thing. You spent most of the time predominantly teaming with John Phoenix, but you also did like some singles feuds with Laz and Onyx and even some stuff with AJ and David Young and guys like that.
Yeah, I think I worked Onyx, man, for like 2 years straight. But it was all really good stuff, and it was all done differently. You know, we would do something different every TV. It was something different, and he was probably my first singles angle was with him, and that was really fun. And then I went on to Laz. That was some of the funniest stuff I've ever done. That I enjoyed doing it, because there was so much stuff that we could do out of that angle that we did, and it was a really really good time, because he's if anybody doesn't know his gimmick, it was like a Britney Spears gimmick, and my gimmick was like this sleazy douchebag, and it was just you could not have got two guys that the attitudes were different as me and him, and I mean it was great.
Yeah, Laz is like the most modern and hip version of Adrian Street. You know, like he was doing that gimmick essentially, but he was kind of tying it to Britney Spears' popularity at the time, and it was unique, and it was pretty groundbreaking, really. I mean, like a dude to just come out as a transvestite and do all of that over the top shit. You know, I think that the years later that maybe wrestling would have been ready for it, but at the time it really wasn't.
Yeah, and what's crazy is he didn't go out there and just half-ass it, man. Like he was really, he danced, he done, the hair, the whole gimmick was just, I thought was awesome. But yeah, like I agree with you. I don't think that it was ready. Now he'd probably be a huge star. But yeah, back then you didn't really know how to take him as far as like mainstream, wrestling, because like you said, there really wasn't anybody like him,
Yeah, it was very unique. Just some of the other Wildside. What are your thoughts on David Young? I know you were very close with David. You had quite a relationship with him over the years, and you didn't do a lot of work together, but as far as in the ring, but you spent a lot of time in locker rooms and on the road together just because of the times that you guys were working and the places you were, and he was just so important to Wildside.
Yeah, he actually. I don't think I respect anybody any more than David, because I had always seen him on shows, like back in the TWA days. He would like to, do other shows, and I've seen him, and I've always heard that, David Young this, David Young that, and I just thought it was just so cool to actually meet him, and for him to give me advice on stuff and ask me to hang out with him, and but yeah, like at that time, man, he was like my big brother. Honestly, he took care of, he wouldn't let anybody take advantage of me. He got me out of a lot of situations that I probably shouldn't have got myself into, and I love him to death. He's a great guy. I still talk to him, about once or twice a month now, and really fun guy to party with. We always had really good times in Nashville together, and you'll never hear me say a bad thing about David Young, ever.
No, I don't think most people would, unless you just got butt hurt by one of his ribs, which he is a true master of. Yeah,
or unless maybe you're a guy that you know, maybe he bangs your old lady or something. You know, other than that.
Yeah, that's true. That's also a pretty distinct possibility. But
that's probably the only bad thing that anybody ever says about him is that. I think it's hilarious.
Well,
but he's good now. Yeah, he's all settled down now, man, and you know, he seems to be pretty happy and content. So, you know, it's all good.
That's good. I mean, that's a guy that really he should have been main eventing somewhere on television. You know, he got his little run in TNA, and it was nice for him, but he deserves so much more.
Yeah, and that's what you know pisses me off is, you know, everybody assumes because you're on TV that you're better than somebody else that's not on TV, and that could not be the furthest from the case. And David is common. You know, David's always, and I'll make fun of him all the time, you know, because one time you'll see him, he'll be like really jacked, and the next time he'll have his gut back. And so any opportunity I have to make fun of him first before he does me, I always try to bring that up. But yeah, man, like he deserved to be a star, you know. But I mean, he did. I mean, he done more than a lot of guys, you know. He was on TV, you know, every week, you know, for them for a while, and you know, I'm sure he made a little bit of money, and you know, so. But yeah, I'm like you, man. He should have got a lot more than he got.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those byproducts like WCW going out of business. You know, it's like a lot of guys I think probably were on the road to getting spots and being put in the right positions, and then WCW crapped. So it hurt a lot of guys' chances of getting jobs. You know, really hurt it.
Yeah, and just because there was that option out there, and you know, when Bert didn't have developmental, Bill did, and when Bill did, and Bert did, so there was always somebody watching, you know, all the time, and that was a good thing, is because you would go to TV and you look out there and Terry Taylor would be watching, or you know, I think actually J.J. Dillon came one time. So like you never knew, you know, what was going to happen, you know, and you got the opportunity to work guys that were on TV with WCW. You know, they brought 3 Count in, and me and Phoenix, you know, worked those guys. And I remember Terry Taylor was there, and you know, I mean, you get your hopes up. You know, I think Paris and Alan had just signed, so. You know, I would talk to Terry, you know, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, you know, you just keep it up, you know." He had told me personally, and it's smoke up my ass. He may have told 1,000 guys in the locker room the same thing. He said, you know, but you and Onyx are next. Now that's what he told me. Now whether that was true or not, I have no idea. Because looking back on it, I was like, I can't believe, you know, that I in the spot that I was in, that I was like, damn, I should have had a job. But then looking back on it, I was 5'7", weighed 160 pounds, you know, so you can't put a guy my size on TV and be super believable. But yeah,
no, I think what they had, I mean, there were other guys, and like, I'll go ahead and say it, you know, there were other guys around at that time that were your size and wasn't in that much better shape than you, that went on to do things. And one of them, even in particular, like I tell you people at home that Adam is one of the funniest people I've met, and we haven't really gotten into the comedy side of things, just but here and there, but we will. If you recall, when WWF brought up Jamie Noble, right? Do you remember this character? And he was all redneckified, and he had his shorts, and he talked and strutted around, and was just that. I swear to God, that they just stole that from your personality, and they told him to act like you. I mean, I swear, because he worked with us down there during the development time. I mean, he knew you well. You know, it wasn't just one of those coincidences like some guys on the Indies are like, I stole my shit. It was like, I mean, it was pretty staggeringly close to like all of your real life mannerisms, and I thought, yeah, well, that tells me that they probably could have done something. And like I said, I think it was just a byproduct of WCW not hanging around, because a lot of guys were probably in a position to get a look next, and it just didn't happen because the company went out of business.
Yeah, and that sucks, because, you know what, right before they went under is when, you know, they were sending some of us and doing the WCW, you know, R&B security stuff, and I had a chance to do that and traveled with them, and you know, they were paying us pretty good. You know, hell, I've done it for free, you know, just to go.
Right.
But I'm just like, imagine, you know, they were paying us, just imagine what the dudes that were on TV were making. No wonder they went under.
Yeah.
You know? So, it's crazy.
A lot of mismanagement there.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough pissing and moaning about WCW. We got about 15 minutes left, a little under, on the interview time here for tonight, so we got a few other topics we can cover. One of those would be really just the guy who is the Wildside name, the face on the Mount Rushmore, so to speak. AJ Styles, the phenomenal one. He's the guy that got signed and made big and was the first of several guys that came out of there over time. But you actually finally got to work a little deal with him, and you've done tag stuff, but really a more focused thing, and culminated in you actually pinning him in the finals of that multi-man War Games match in 2002. So just, you know, talk about AJ as a person, the facts versus the myths as you know him, and what it was like working with him, and getting that moment. You know, it is all it's all showmanship in that respect. You know, we do what we're told, but certainly getting a win over a guy like that is a huge show of faith from the people in charge. So it's got to mean something.
Yeah, well, at that time, he was actually, when I beat him, he was the X Division champion, I believe. I'm thinking he already had the X title or whatever the deal was, but yeah, he's one of those dudes that as soon as you seen him work, you were like, he's going to be a star. But I will, to my credit, he will never ever be as tan as me. We actually used to talk about that. He was all, I mean, we'd look in the mirror before we'd go out, and he'd raise his shirt up, and he'd have just abs galore, and he would be like, I'll never be as tan as you. And I said, well, I'll never be as ripped as you. So that was just kind of our own funny little joke, and I've always been known to have a little bit of a sailor's mouth. I've kind of kept it a little toned down from the interview. I've cussed like a sailor, but every time I would say I dropped the GD, he would hit me on the arm, every time. And it was like I knew it was coming, and it was like I would almost find him in the building and tell him, hey, Alan, I said GD. And he would, you know, smack me on the arm or whatever. But we always had a good relationship. I haven't talked to him, you know, in a while. But we always got along, and it was really, really fun to work. And the matches were good. And yeah, that whole War Games deal was just a fun match, you know, all together. And it did mean a lot for Bill and everybody else in the office at the time to put that faith in me, to put the belt on somebody my size. I know I didn't run with it long, and that was the majority was my fault, because I was come and go and you know, and that kind of deal. But yeah, I mean, there was really nothing, you know, bad I can say. We got along good, and you know, the matches were always good. He's a good guy. He deserves everything he's got.
Yeah, absolutely. And still to this day, just as down to earth and just as laid back and cool. I mean, he is a guy, he makes, and as bitter and jaded as I am about wrestling, he makes me enthusiastic about wrestling, just being around him, because after all the shit he's been through, he's still enthusiastic about wrestling. He's still back there pulling the young guys aside, talking to them about their match. He's still back there just blending in with the locker room and leading the boys in prayer, and, you know, just doing all the stuff that AJ does. Like, he's really at home back on the indies, and it's really good to see that. And he was excited about coming on here and talking Wildside. So, yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, we always had fun, and we're talking about guys. A couple of guys that I don't want to leave out. Was me and Phoenix worked with the Boogaloo crew, running a little angle with them, JC Daz and Scotty Urin, and those were some of my best matches ever that I've ever had was those two guys. Just super nice guys, and really fun to work with. There was really nobody there that, as far as the Wildside guys that were there every TV, that I didn't get along with, that I didn't like. They can bring, guys in every once in a while, and, they don't necessarily like. Other than that, man, the whole locker room was just full of really good guys.
Yeah, it really was. It was just a lot of guys trying to get to that same place and trying to kind of sharing in that adventure. And speaking of adventures, you and me and more so many of the other guys got into quite a few of them. Or are there any that you'd care to share on the road? I don't know, without incriminating some people that it would even be possible, but I got to think with a guy as entertaining as you that there's probably something that you can share that will leave our audience laughing.
Shit, dude, there's so many. And a lot of them were
the Potty Humor Network, after all.
Yeah, some of the stories. We're married and settled down now. We don't want to rehash any of that stuff. But shit, let me think of some. I remember, the one time, me and you stayed in the hotel, and it was like the shitbird inn. I mean, it was horrible. And like the lock was like a padlock. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, we had no money, to our name. That was a pretty good little trip.
One of those deals where we did like an Athens show the night before and then had TV the next day, so we were like down there for a little bit of a layover.
Yeah, probably one of the stories that's I don't know if you've heard the story about David Young locking me in the bathroom, or so I thought.
Maybe. Refresh my memory.
We had did NWA Florida. I think we did it like on a Friday, and that Saturday is when the whole TNA deal was starting to come up. So Bill was like, "You need to get to the fairgrounds." Jerry Jarrett and a bunch of the guys that were starting it, they're going to be there. And we're like, well, we're in Florida, and Bill's like, well, you got to get back. If you want to get looked at, you need to come. So we're driving, and we stop at this like gas station in Bumblefuck somewhere, and I go in, and I go into the store, and Dave's pumping gas. Well, I've got a piss, so I go in there and do my deal and go to open the door. I can't get the door open. So automatically I assume that Dave's holding the door shut because he's a big dude. So I start slamming into the door. I'm like getting a running start, trying to like slam the door, thinking that I'm going to get through the door. So I finally am like exhausted. I swear to God, man, I was in there probably 20 or 30 minutes. And so finally, all of a sudden, I'll just sit down on the floor and I'm like, fuck it. He'll eventually, surely to God, he'll eventually unlock the door or let me out. Something. All of a sudden, the door opens and it's like this 270-year-old man walks into the bathroom, and I'm like, "Where's that son of a bitch at?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "The guy holding the door." Well, there was somebody holding the door. So I'm thinking he was holding the door and then told the guy or whatever to go on in. Well, the whole way through the store, I'm like cussing, and I actually like cuss the cashier out. I'm like, "Where's that son of a bitch at?" So there was nobody there. To this day, he swears up and down that he didn't hold the door. So the whole time going back down the road, I'm thinking I've got to get him back. So I end up telling him that I think I've left something. They need to check the trunk. So I'm thinking, when this son of a bitch gets out, I'm going to lock the door and I'm going to take off. on the interstate, and I'm going to drive 3 or 4 exits, and I'm going to leave him there. So I'm like, Dave, you need to pull over. I think I, forgot something or whatever. So he goes to get out of the car. As soon as he opens the door, he looks back at me, and he takes the keys out of the ignition. And I'm like, you motherfucker! And he gets back in the car. And, I thought I had him. Like, I was so excited about that rib. And I've never been, like, the best ribber in the world. I'm really good about people getting me. But I was so excited about getting him back. And at the end of the day, he got me. And I still think he held the bathroom door shut for 30 minutes. He says he didn't, but whatever.
That's fucking hilarious.
The classic. We got time for one more David Young story.
So what now?
We got time for one more David Young story. It's just popped in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Got 4 minutes.
Okay. We had done a show. I lived in Fort Oglethorpe at the time, Georgia, and David lived in Atlanta. And it's about an hour and a half drive. I don't even know if he remembers this. I remember he had dropped me off at my apartment, and I called him. About an hour later, he was almost home, and I called him. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm out here on the street. She's kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. You're gonna have to come back and get me. I have nowhere to stay." And of course, I was in my bed, on the phone the whole time I was talking to him. So this son of a bitch drives all the way back from Atlanta to come back and pick me up another hour back, and I was at home, like in the bed. He was madder than hell. He drove like an hour and a half for like no reason.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that's probably some of the P-rated, PG-rated stories.
Yeah, well, not much on this show is PG, but so later if you decide you want to protect the innocent and withhold names and dish out something even funnier, then you're more than welcome to. I think we pretty much covered all the Wildside years. I know you didn't have an extremely long run down there, but you were there as a key figure probably during one of the most important parts of it. And of course you came back there for the end, like everybody did when they went out of business. And just any final thoughts on Bill Barron's and Wildside and the whole experience, and also plug your shit. You got about 3 minutes.
Yeah. I have nothing bad to say. Wildside was the best thing that I ever did, and I met a lot of guys, and always got along with Bill, and I'm sure Bill got tired of me calling and bitching. Bill could always calm me down. If I'd get like a high light bill at my home, I would call Raising Hell, and Bill would calm me down. I know it sounds silly, but those actually conversations did happen. As far as what I'm doing now, man, I want to plug. I'm doing a show in Carrollton, Georgia. It's called Peach State. I'm there every other week. It's a really good show. Tons of really good guys. I do Empire in Rossville. They run every week, every Saturday. I haven't been there in a while, but anxious to get back. I'm kind of actually feel a little rejuvenated and kind of wanting to do a little bit of something. And the only problem is I still bump at 35 like I did at 20. And it's a little harder to get out of the bed than the next morning. But other than that, man, Wildside was great.
Yeah, it was, and you were one of the key figures, man. Well, we are out of time, folks. If you want to catch up with Adam Jacobs, look him up on Facebook. Just type his name in the search function. Promoters want to book him. He still looks good. He's still in shape. He can still work his ass off. And like he just said, he's unfortunately bumping like he was in his 20s still, so definitely want to check him out. But this is the Reverend for the Midnight Black Mass. We'll see you next week, folks. Keep one foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold, and we are out of here. Good night.